Since 10 a.m. local time, Spain has now entered unchartered waters. Madrid's deadline is come and gone for Catalonia's president to renounce independence.
Although the question of whether or not Catalonia had declared independence was asked in the clearest terms, we did not receive an answer. The Spanish government will therefore continue with the procedures outlined in Article 155 of the Constitution to restore legality in Catalonia's government.
So what will Madrid do? Call in the army? Arrest regional president Carles Puigdemont? The escalation around the staging of that banned October 1st independence referendum now entering a new phase. Ahead of a special cabinet meeting on Saturday by the government, we're going to be asking our panel what Article 155 and direct rule actually mean for Spain. The separatists reject the call in Catalonia by Madrid to stage snap elections. Instead, they're calling for mass protests to demand the release of two of their leaders imprisoned on sedition charges. With Spaniards and Catalans bitterly divided, what can cool the country's worst political crisis in 4 decades? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at Spain's moment of truth. And joining us from Barcelona, Alessandro of pro-independence grassroots civic organization ANC. Welcome to the show.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much.
We also want to welcome writer and translator Liz Castro, the author of Many Grains of Sands, a source book of ideas for changing the world, tried and tested in Catalonia. Thanks for being with us. From London, Roberto Robles, Senior Associate at Business and Political Consultants Global Counsel. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. Now, under the current constitution that followed the fall of the Franco dictatorship, Spain's government has never before triggered Article 155. It hasn't formally done so yet, but the government of Mariano Rajoy setting the wheels in motion. Erin Ogunke explains.
Spain is a notoriously decentralized country. The Spanish government grants 17 autonomous regions varying degrees of political autonomy in health, education, security, urban and environmental policy. But the 1978 Constitution also contains a safeguard for the Spanish government. Article 155 allows the central government to take control over autonomous regions in times of crisis.
If a self-governing community does not fulfill the obligations imposed on it by the Constitution or other laws, or acts in a way that is seriously prejudicial to the general interest of Spain, the government may, following approval granted by the overall majority of the Senate, take all measures necessary to compel the community to meet said obligations or to protect the above-mentioned general interest.
The article is short and relatively imprecise. The second paragraph vaguely stipulates that the government may issue instructions to all the authorities of the self-governing communities. Article 155 has never been used, making it difficult to know how it would be applied in practice. According to this specialist, the government could choose between a number of different measures to restrict Catalonia's autonomy.
It could be anything from economic intervention to control over the autonomous police forces, or even control over the region's institutions. And we could even get to a point where the government makes the decision to dissolve the regional parliament and hold early elections.
To trigger Article 155, Mariano Rajoy will have to submit the exact measures he intends to apply to a vote in the Spanish Senate.
Yeah, in a Spanish Senate where the Conservatives have a majority, the Conservatives of Mariano Rajoy. Joining us, by the way, as well for our show from Madrid, Victor Gomez Frias, academic and a member of Spain's Socialist Party. Let me begin with you, Victor. Thank you for being with us. What is exactly going to happen with Article 155? What's concretely going to take place?
Yes. So Article 155, it's not an article to suspend the autonomy or just to make coercive measures without a rule. It's a question of bringing back the rule.
All right, we seem to have lost the connection there with Madrid. We'll try to cross back. Roberto Robles, how do you understand Article 155?
I would agree with the previous speaker. I think that the whole purpose of Article 155 is to return return the rule of law and legality to Catalonia and the regional government, which has very clearly stepped outside of the law. The article, as you described, is quite broad in its intention, but I think actually it will be applied in quite a limited sense, because the government has the backing of the mainstream opposition parties, the Socialists and Ciudadanos, and where there is agreement is on triggering new elections in Catalonia. And I think that will be the extent of the application of Article 155. I don't think we will see the sort of suspension or elimination of autonomy that some people have predicted. I don't think you'll see the central government somehow removing Puigdemont from his place altogether, but we will see a very swift period in which the central government takes over the capacity to call new elections in the region.
So it'll be basically the central government dissolving the regional parliament, and it will stay at that?
I believe that is what is going to happen, yes, because although the government, as you described, the PP, has a majority in the Senate, I don't believe that it will decide to act unilaterally. I believe that it will want to maintain the consensus that it has created with the Socialist Party and with Ciudadanos. And I mean, the Socialist Party has already said that they want a very, very limited application of Article 155 to only focus on the dissolution of Parliament and the triggering of new elections in Catalonia, which would take about 54 days is what the law foresees. So we probably will see elections in Catalonia at the beginning of next year.
Adrià Alsina, the authorities in Catalonia so far rejecting the idea of early elections. What do you see happening under Article 155? What does your crystal ball tell you?
Yeah, I was listening to Mr. Robles, and we can focus on speculations, or we can focus on what's already happening. And we have seen how the Spanish government has already tried to take over the Catalan police by imposing an overarching, they call it coordination, coordinated by the Spanish police, and we saw how well that played out in October the 1st. We know also that the Spanish government has also imposed tight rules of supervision over the Catalan the Catalan Ministry of Finance. So all that buzz about the 155, well, it is already in application. The main difference here is mainly political to me. It's that so far in the last weeks, the Spanish government has been trying to apply measures that would be included in the 155, but without actually going to the Senate and having to explain them, because that would pose them in a very difficult situation in front of their neighbors and allies in the European Union.
Their neighbors and allies within the European Union. What's going to happen then after the Senate? What are they going to, in your view, what are they going to tell the Senate, and what's going to be the reaction from people within your grassroots organization?
I think that any sort of further intervention in Catalonia's autonomy is going to be responded by a massive display of political determination, both by the population of Catalonia and by the Catalan government, which I believe, and it has already said so in the last days, in the last hours, that they will not just wait for it, and they will probably just come out with a declaration of independence.
Come out with a declaration of independence? You really think that Carles Puigdemont will do that?
Well, Carles Puigdemont just got permission from his party yesterday, from the PDeCAT. Esquerra Republicana, the second party in the coalition, also said that yesterday. And the CUP, which is the minor coalition member, already said a couple of days ago that they were expecting a full declaration of independence in the coming days.
All right, we can listen to a spokesperson from his party there, the PECAT, who's suggesting that, well, their snap elections are not on the cards. Again, that call made by the Spanish Prime Minister, firmly rejected by the party of Catalonia's president.
Today we are not in the scenario of elections. Today we are on the scene of reiterating dialogue and warning the government that obviously if dialogue is abandoned, it will be inevitable that the Catalonian Parliament will proceed to implement the results of October 1st.
Liz Castro, you're in favor of independence. If there was the dissolving of the Catalan Parliament, would you encourage people to vote or to boycott?
Well, before we get to the dissolving of the Catalan Parliament, it's interesting that Mr. Robles talked about returning to democracy when, in fact, that parliament that has a majority in favor of independence was elected in the highest turnout elections in Catalonia's history. The democracy here would be allowing that parliament to remain. And in fact, that parliament has insisted that it's not going anywhere unless the people ask for it to be dissolved, and the people are not going to ask for that. The democracy here is listening to the mandate of the people. So I don't believe that there will be new elections, and I don't believe that people would vote on them if Spain tried to impose them. Furthermore, who would be the parties in those elections? You know, if Spain were to somehow force elections, are they going to illegalize the pro-independence parties? In fact, they've talked about that. Is that a democracy, to say that a party cannot have an independence in its electoral program? PP leaders have suggested that that would be a way to go forward, but that is no semblance of democracy when the only way that you can win is by illegalizing the parties that you don't like.
But that hasn't happened yet.
It seems to me that
Spain
has very little idea of what democracy really is.
That hasn't happened yet, and some critics are saying that the reason why Carles Puigdemont doesn't want to go to early elections is that he...
about illegalizing parties? Actually, it has.
Well, the parties that are represented in the Catalan Parliament are all still legal. They
are currently legal, but they are the PP leaders in Catalonia are talking about trying to illegalize those parties. That would be a travesty of democracy.
Liz Castro, critics are saying, Liz Castro,
if they don't,
critics are saying,
suppose they don't illegalize those parties and they have new elections, who's going to win?
Liz Castro, the critics are saying that the reason Carles Puigdemont doesn't want to stage these new elections is he's in a coalition that goes from the center-right to the far left, and that if those snap elections take place, he's not sure of having as many votes as in the past.
I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason that he doesn't want to have elections is because the referendum law in Catalonia says that the referendum should have consequences, and that he has promised to implement the result that the people asked for, and the people asked for independence, and so he is committed to making that the law of the land. People voted for independence, and he said that he would do that. So no, I don't think that that's the problem with holding new elections. That in fact, the coalition of the center-left, the center-right, and the far-left coup is actually a really interesting and progressive wide gamut of political parties that make up this independence movement. It's an indication of how broad this movement is and how well supported it is across Catalan society and how much support it gets from different sectors. This is not just
but only won
46%
of the popular vote.
Issue. This is something that affects people from across the board. In fact, it won 40. You mean in the elections to the parliament? The pro-independence parties won 48% of the vote, as compared with 39% that were not in favor of independence. The remaining 11% did not position themselves one way or another. In fact, in the referendum, there was about 43% who finally made it to the polls, having to brave that police brutality, get bashed in their head. But they still made it. That's more than 2 million people, more people than, in fact, voted in favor or voted for the Statute of Autonomy of Catalonia. More people a higher percentage than voted for Brexit. So, I think it's a perfectly representative amount of the people.
The connection is back with Madrid. We can welcome back Victor Gomez Frias. Apologies for those difficulties. Your thoughts on whether or not Madrid can impose a snap election?
Yes, I think that the independent position it's based on several fake assumptions, and the very first is that Spain is an authoritarian regime or even a flawed democracy at least, and it's not at all. No, when we see, for example, rankings as the Economist Democracy Index, we are above the 10% best in the world. So we are a full democracy. If we say electoral pluralism, functioning of government, political participation, political culture, civil liberties, in all those aspects, we are at the very top, considered as a full democracy. For example, some main important countries from our environment, as in Europe, not only the United States, but also Portugal, France, have some minor elements in which Spain is not considered at all as any problem. We are a full democracy. So it's when we get from that, hearing that there was brutality in the police, etc., I think that it's very difficult to understand that. We might have seen some images where police were facing a lot of people going in front of them, but I would like to ask the independent representatives, where was the photo, where were the videos of the president of Catalonia, Mr. Puigdemont, or any of his councillors visiting the people in the hospitals that evening? They were not, because they were only 2 people from 2 million people that had suffered, and it was a pity that they suffered, but it's something that happens every
so police
day.
Brutality just only applies when you have to spend a couple of days in hospital. Is that what you're saying?
People. So it was a brutality, no? Where was the image of Mr. Puigdemont visiting the sick people in the hospital? Where was it? It wasn't, because
that's totally amazing.
It was also
so please explain us where's the limit between actual. So it was only propaganda.
I'm sorry,
my friends who broke their legs,
I'm going to have to interrupt, not to curtail the conversation, but because we have to cut to a very quick break. We'll be right back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate. Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. It's the France 24 debate deadline day, and the deadline has passed for Catalonia's leaders to renounce independence. They didn't get that. Instead, the leaders from Catalonia sending Madrid a letter in which they said, most notably, it's the people of Catalonia who voted for independence October 1st. If Madrid continues to reject dialogue, Parliament can then decide on approving independence, quote, if it's timely. Well, Wednesday night, we've seen how divided Catalonia is on this. Wednesday night, the pro-unionist camp rallied. On Saturday, it's going to be the turn of the separatists. Their rallying cry, free the 2 Jordis, Jordi Cuixart and Jordi Sanchez, leaders of 2 powerful grassroots independence groups who've been detained pending an investigation into sedition charges.
We will not accept Article 155, and we will not stop asking for freedom for Jordis. Freedom for Jordis is a priority, and that's why it is important that on Saturday people mobilize for the Jordis. There is a process for triggering Article 155, so it is not immediate, so there will be time.
And again, welcoming back for this discussion here on France 24 with Adria Alsina, whose leader is one of those 2 who's been imprisoned. He's with the pro-independence grassroots civil organization ANC. Welcome back as well from Barcelona to writer and translator Liz Castro, the author of Many Grains of Sand. From Madrid, academic Victor Gomez Frias. And from London, Roberto Robles, Senior Associate at Business and Political Consultants Global Council. Roberto, let me read to you, because we've had many reactions on the hashtag F24 debate. One from Trevor. He says, Catalonia is deliberately baiting the central government into constitutional but draconian measures to boost the popularity of independence. Your thoughts on that? Has Madrid played into the hands of the separatists?
Well, I think both parties have tried to be actually fairly measured in their approach. I would describe this as some kind of asymmetric trench warfare situation where both parties are measuring their positions, but ultimately one of them has the bigger legal guns, if you like. However, it is in the interest of the separatist government to try to force an overreaction from the government of Madrid in order to play up to its base in Catalonia, and this is why I think the central government is being quite careful in actually limiting how it will apply Article 155. You will not see tanks on the streets of Barcelona. I mean, that would, as I said, completely play up to what the pro-independence parties wish, and I think this is why the government has to be quite careful here and not to play into the separatist game.
But how about the imprisonment of the two Jordis? How is that going to play?
Well, in Spain, I mean, we have a division of powers. We have an independent judiciary, and we have a judge who, according to the law, determined that these two individuals, she charged them of sedition for basically inciting people to block the actions of the police. I mean, we don't have political prisoners in Spain. You know, they according to the crime of sedition, they incited people to stop what the civil guard was doing in terms of exercising a judicial mandate, and that is why they've been charged. I mean, it may be, as you say, that this will play up in the and boost pro-independent sentiment, but ultimately, the judiciary in Spain is a non-political body, and it may be that has political consequences.
May I interject there?
Alessandro.
Sorry, say that again?
Just, if you let me just quote, both Mr. Gomez and Mr. Robles seem to think that beating up people is great and fine as long as people don't stay over 24 hours in hospital. Is that right?
Pretty much. Say that.
And I never said such a thing.
And apparently it's also great
never said that.
to jail political democracy activists. As long
well, I don't remember the Catalan government
who says it. That's exactly the same kind of narrative that every authoritarian government all over the world is been saying all over ages in history. It's interesting.
I remember
that you
very clearly
up
the Catalan government asking for prison for the indignados.
Just let me finish here. Just let me finish here. I'll let you finish. All right. Just let me finish, because it's interesting that you brought the idea that there's an independent judiciary. Because, well, we know that the judge who actually declared,
yes.
put the two Jordis in jail actually is a judge that was discreetly sidelined from the Supreme Court a couple of years ago because she was seen to be too close to the ruling PP party. So it's interesting. She was sidelined from the Supreme Court and sent out to the Audiencia Nacional because she was too close to a political party, and now all of a sudden she's the most independent judge in the country.
Roberto Robles?
Well, I mean, this is how the division of power operates. It is the case that in Spain, individual judges are appointed by political parties, and some may wish that was not the case, including myself. But we nevertheless have an independent judiciary who does not act on behalf of the government, and that is what the judges decided. They have not been convicted.
Is basically controlled by the parties.
They are professional judges.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what was said.
No, not those ones. And you know that not those ones. These are professional judges with a very long judicial experience, and that so there are 5 penal judges, and they get the issues one after another. So this was number 4, I think, and they just got that because the previous issue that arrived to the audience was to the other judge, number 3. So he got that just because there is the rule of law, and he was the judge that was appointed by law. So there was no privilege. It was a procedure that is perfectly established and that has all the guarantees and is recognized like that by the democracy index.
A procedure
Sorry, there's too many people speaking at once here. Too many people speaking at once. First, Victor Gomez Frias, and then I'll put the floor to Liz Castro.
From every part of the world.
Go ahead, Victor.
First me. Okay, thank you. No, so precisely the judicial system of Spain works based on professional judges, and the law explains which judge has to rule every case. So this judge is not because he was appointed by any party, because he was not, or because any party or the government or any political figure chose that the independent case had to be seen by this person because he was close to them. No, it was just the judge that the rule of law determined that has to got that case. It's another example of a perfect
just by coincidence,
system
typical
coincidence. Of separation of
But Victor Gomez Frias, let me just ask you about this, because when you have from abroad, we see the headlines. We see the headlines, Victor, saying that they could be charged with sedition. Now, it may be a criminal charge, but it sounds like a political one, doesn't it?
Yes, of course. No, I think that we have to distinguish
between it seems like a political charge because it is a political charge.
Prisoners.
There was a demonstration on September 20th in which people spontaneously went to the corner where the building was, where they had arrested Catalan government officials for trying to hold a referendum.
Okay, all those people,
and those two democratic leaders were trying to get people to go home.
Those who are in jail,
they didn't commit any sedition. And anyway, at any rate, it doesn't make any sense to put those two leaders in jail for having a completely peaceful democratic rally. And for, I mean, their behavior over the past 6 years is completely known. It's documented.
No.
Victor Gomez.
Sorry?
No, you are, can I speak? You are mixing, to make some confusion, the opinion, which is the free of speech, the free of opinion is fully guaranteed in Spain. And that's why now there is a lot of representatives in Catalonian parliament.
Oh, is it? That's why they closed our website. Yes, indeed.
Independence. But in order to submit that, there is a procedure. And it's not the 2 million people that have those opinions that are in jail. Those people are not committing sedition. Those who are committing sedition and are going to be charged for that are the people that from the institutions, they are not civil resistance. They are not people from the street that are having an opinion and are sitting on the street. No, they are people that are the representatives of the states that have been chosen by the regular elections of a Spanish legal system, and that from their authority, they decide to break the law. So that's why they are accused of sedition. If there was a Republic of Catalonia...
No, that's not the case.
It's two private organizations. Sorry.
They are democratic organizers.
Liz Castro.
They're not elected officials. No. That's false. They are democratic organizers that have put 1 million people on the street 6 years in a row and without a single window broken. They are people who are mobilizing in favor of democracy. We have an active society here who's very interested in promoting the things that it wants. That's the way a democracy is supposed to work. When people want something, they elect a parliament, they mobilize, they educate themselves, they get people to go out on the street and say what they want. They do it peacefully and democratically, and they should not be charged for sedition.
Roberto Robles.
Well, I mean, they're not being charged for sedition for holding this political point of view.
Not always peacefully.
They're being charged for sedition because they prevented the police from doing their job, standing on top of police cars that have been smashed. So, I mean, I'm not quite sure that you can class them as political prisoners. They're not in jail because of their political views.
It's on video.
And in Spain, anyone is free to share their political view. What you're not free to do is to break the law, and that is what these individuals have done.
They are in jail for their political views. They're in jail because they were at that rally. I was at that rally. I should be in jail too. Exactly. I mean, there were 40,000 people at that rally. Those two people who are in jail right now were trying to get people to go home. They asked permission to stand on that car to tell people to dissolve the rally and to go home. They are in jail because they are the leaders of two very strong civic organizations who have been able to mobilize the people to ask what they want in a peaceful, democratic way that Spain has no response to. Spain has refused to answer any of the desires or wishes or requests that people have made.
Adriel Sina, let me bring you into this because you're a member
and
of
that is a shame. And the fact that it now thinks that it needs to put people in jail so that they're not able to mobilize those people it's not playing by the rules.
Adriel Sina, let me ask you because there's a bit of
you're allowed to say what you want. You're allowed to go out on the street. You're allowed to have free assembly and free expression.
Right, Liz Castro, many thanks.
You can't get sent to jail for that. That's
let me ask Adriel Sina about this because there is this question regarding your organization, ANC, and the other one, which is, of course, they are grassroots organizations, but they've gotten money, funding, from the regional government. So are they advocacy groups for the independence camp that have backing from the Catalan region, or are they completely separate from the region?
The ANC has never, ever received a single dime from the regional government or from any other government whatsoever. As we are a pro-independence organization, we get inspections by the Spanish state every single year. Don't you think that that would have been proven after an inspection every single year if we have gotten any euro from the regional government? That said, Mr. Gomez there said that freedom of expression is granted in Spain. Well, I'm afraid it's not anymore because I would assume that all our audience over there in the world would agree that designing leaflets and taking them to demonstrations, having a website might be included in the freedom of expression, under freedom of expression. Well, we were prevented. Our website was blocked several times in the last weeks. And several of our leaflets, several of our T-shirts were also raided and confiscated by the Spanish police.
Because they were trying to promote an illegal action.
Oh, so say no, please. So a T-shirt that says yes, a T-shirt that says yes is illegal in Spain.
Republic. That's what those
leaflets say. A T-shirt that says yes is illegal in Spain. You've said everything. Thank you very much. So now your audience knows that a T-shirt that says yes is illegal in Spain. So your audience can know whether Spain is a democracy or not.
Roberto Robles, what happens next in terms of at one point?
You're trying to make a humor. Of course that.
It's not humorous. It's not humorous. Many of my friends have been beaten up. Yes. And my organization is about to be closed and illegalized by people like Mr. Gomez in Madrid. So no, I'm not funny at all. I'm not being funny at all. I'm just trying for the audience to understand that in Spain nowadays a T-shirt that says yes is illegal. A leaflet that says yes is illegal, and a banner that says yes, and a website that says yes is illegal.
All right, Victor Gomez Frias, let me ask you, because as we've seen throughout this past hour in our discussion...
And a person who holds a democratic demonstration can be sent to jail.
Liz Castro, please. Victor Gomez Frias, as we've seen in our past, over the past hour, there's a lot of acrimony. That acrimony, speaking to people even within Spain, runs in families. It runs among friends who are not speaking to each other at this particular point in time. How are we going to be able to see a situation where Spain finds some way to sit down and dialogue?
As you say, that's the most important question about what are we doing.
I mean, I think that's I think people feel very strongly about it, but I don't think there's any hate.
I think that the level of noise shows that there was some acrimony, and I think that we have to recognize that, and maybe we can at least agree on that. So why is there acrimony? I think that there's acrimony because a lot of people in Catalonia for many time have been afraid of speaking about what they thought that their authorities were breaking the law, because they knew that they could have some trouble about that, because they were public agents and their bosses, the public authorities, were determining that the law has to be breaking in several aspects. So there was a limitation of speech, of freedom of expression for non-nationalist people in Catalonia for a lot of time. And now nationalist people went so far, they thought that they could achieve their their ultimate option, that is to make foreigners in their own country, that people said that's enough. So they said, we are not going to allow that. There were 1 million people going to a demonstration of that a week after the illegal referendum. And that's what make now, I think, that a necessary space of tension. So I think it's not bad that everybody now express its anxiety, its frustration about how the Catalonian authorities have been functioning in an illegal way. So how are we going to put that in order? So the first is to set the law has to be respected. So those people that from the authority have breaking the law, or that people that have cooperated with them, like Mr. Jordi Cuixart and Mr. Jordi Sánchez, who are principal cooperators of Mr. Puigdemont in the activity of breaking the law, organizing illegal activities. So those people, and I think it's natural, everyone who has criminal charges has to face the justice, a justice that is fully recognized as a system with all the guarantees in the international system. And next, what? I think that we have to do a political presence of the state, of that state.
So illegal activities like printing banners. It's interesting. I think it would be good, again, for the audience. Audience, for instance, living in France, in the UK, in the United States. Mr. Gomez and Mr. Robles just said they are promoting things that are illegal, that are outside the Constitution. So by saying the same thing, you would say, oh, printing a banner with a communist flag, or printing a banner with gay marriage in some countries where gay marriage is still not legal, that would have to be, you would have to go to jail because it's not in the Constitution, it's not in law. So printing banners, it's not the same. So printing banners with a yes, again, printing banners with a yes, having T-shirts with a yes, must be illegal because saying yes in Spain is now illegal.
Roberto Robles, let me ask you, how do you, at this point in time, what can be done to bring both sides to both sides of the table at this point?
Well, I think it's very difficult because at the moment the Catalan government has they've said that they're open to dialogue, but dialogue on their terms that only and exclusively include independence. And it's hard to see what sort of middle ground there is and how the pro-independence government can be brought back to the table. It's interesting that, I mean, the Socialist Party has now advocated and managed the creation of a committee in the parliament to look at the reform of Spain's territorial model, to which the governing People's Party and the Ciudadanos parties have said they're going to join. But the pro-independence parties in Catalonia, the Republican left, and Puigdemont's PDeCAT, they've said they're not even interested in attending this committee. So it shows that even a sort of middle ground that advocates some kind of wholesale reform of Spain's territorial system is not even in their interest, and all they're looking for is independence. So I'm not quite sure how you resolve this dispute because the political parties in Catalonia, they're so firmly stuck on this position, and it's I don't see any indication that they're going to be brought back.
Anyone who has seen any negotiation all over the world will know, first thing you do when you actually want to enter a negotiation and your decentral power, so the ones who actually have the power, is you take some prisoners out of prison. And that's very easy. We got 2 political prisoners, or even non-political, if you don't want to call them political. We got 2 prisoners. It's as easy as taking them out of prison. Mr. Puigdemont
are you suggesting that your organization would...
in his letter on Monday.
So are you suggesting your organization, the ANC, would advocate something that was not independence?
No, I'm just saying that they're
I'm not quite sure how you negotiate if you don't move away from that position.
The problem with
unfortunately, we're out of time, so we're going to have to leave it there. But I want to
negotiate. We are just a grassroots movement. Had an opportunity to solve some of Catalonia's problems in the 90s and in the 2000s. And unfortunately was unable to do that. It went back on its promises.
And that's certainly one of the issues that's been brought up,
that has come up to date stems directly from the fact that the socialists have promised something that it cannot deliver.
All right, we're gonna pick up on those points in the days and weeks to come. I want to thank you, Liz Castro, for joining us from Barcelona. I want to thank as well Adrià Alsina from the Catalan capital, Victor Gomez Frias in Madrid, and Roberto Robles in London. Stay with us.
Thank you.
Media Watch is next. And we say hello to James Creedon. Hi, Francois. I'm sort of haunted by what we heard at the end there, that neither side is ready to budge on.
Gosh, the headlines are very dramatic on this one, and it shows the extent to which really people have dug in their heels on both sides. Look at this headline in CNBC, Francois. Spain ready to go nuclear on Catalonia as final independence deadline nears. Now, I suppose that they're referring there in very dramatic language to Article 155, which has been invoked. So really, it is the nuclear option in terms of constitutional solutions that Spain has for this independence bid. And you can see here that all eyes really were on the EU to kind of mediate in this regard. Pro and anti-independence Catalans calling both of them for EU help, but actually not many friends really in Brussels for independence-orientated Catalonians. There was even this particular moment, which we have a video of in a moment, between the Belgian Prime Minister Charles Michel and the Spanish Prime Minister. The Belgian Prime Minister then downplayed this rift over Catalonia because they had put pressure on Mario Rajoy to sort of be more lenient in this regard. You can see here a fleeting greeting between Rajoy and Belgium's Michel, where they had been at odds over Catalonia, and indeed it was a pretty, it's not exactly like they sat down to chit-chat for quite a while. Just a few more reactions online, Francois. The opinion on social media in the English language, at least, is predominantly, overwhelmingly in favour of the Catalans. We either stand with Catalonia or democracy and right to self-determination in Europe dies as an ideal. Spanish state has crossed a line, and really, I'm trying to kind of find the middle line here. But it's, as I said, if you're just looking objectively on Twitter in English under the hashtag Catalonia, the tweets are overwhelmingly in favour of the Catalans in this particular situation. Stay strong and peaceful, Catalonia. The world is seeing your brutal treatment at the hands of a very undemocratic Spain. You will win. And Stephen Marek here saying how to lose Catalonia. Step 1, brutalise their voters. Step 2, arrest their civic leaders. Step 3, abolish their parliament. Game over Spain. Except, well, I suppose clearly the decision has been taken by the Spanish authorities to use that quote-unquote nuclear option, as CNBC has called it. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Catalonia is sending a letter. Spain answers 10 minutes afterwards with a communique. That's Spain's willingness to dialogue. So there was a letter there written, and instead of an open letter in reply, it was a sort of communique. So I suppose a slightly different tone there to that one. This is...
In fairness, they didn't offer much that was new.
Right. So perhaps that's not the whole picture either in that tweet. But Germany in the EU, this is the official Twitter account of Germany's, I suppose, permanent representation to the EU, talking about the items on the agenda today at that summit meeting, including Catalonia. And this is one Catalan person replying, if Catalonia is not in the heart of Europe, Europe will not be in the hearts of Catalans. So certainly Europe being caught in the crossfire there in terms of mediation, and certainly perhaps not all sides fully happy with it. There's just one final angle here, Francois, from the kind of media, online social media point of view here. A lot of interest in the extent to which the internet had a role to play in this locking of horns between Madrid and Barcelona. The Great Catalonian Cyber War of 2017 is the headline of this article in the last day or two, published on the Washington Post website, where they talk about the apps being taken down, referendum apps. Spanish officials speaking to Google Play say, take this referendum app down. And you have people such as Jeremy Malcolm of Electronic Frontier Foundation, who they spoke to in the Washington Post, saying that they monitor freedom of expression online, and this issue, from their point of view, sees Spain really going beyond the pale of what it would be acceptable in terms of freedom of expression. Of course, you have other points of view being expressed in that article to the Spanish embassy in Washington, saying that they did things by the book, but certainly that locking of horns is taking place online as well. The online aspect of it is very considerable.
All right, many thanks for that, James Creedon. And of course, this is going to continue to play out. We want to thank our panel once again. Thank you for joining us here in the France 24 debate.